So I want to talk to you a little bit about why we're working on this image. So I chose this image for its rule of thirds properties. The reason I think that it's significant, and it's not perfect, right? Because this is basically at eye level photography, right? You're not standing up on platforms to get exactly the perfect angle. What you're really trying to do is just off the cuff capture the essence of a rule of thirds composition, right? But it does make for a really attractive balance of the image. So basically the object of the image is centered around the bottom third horizontal, right? That's it. It just utilizes that as the centerpiece for where you place the particular item of interest along the framing of the image. And then additionally, you can see that you've got basically one bay to the right, and you've got one bay to the left of the third mark. So even though the mass of the right side is larger and it sticks farther out beyond that third line than you would see here on the left-hand side, it somehow feels balanced because the third line here is aligned with the second to last column on the right, and the third line here is aligned with the second to last column on the left. And the balance of the image is further strengthened by the fact that how far this edge sticks out on the right-hand side is balanced by how far the awning sticks out on the left-hand side. Okay, so in my opinion, I think this is a tremendously taken eye-level photograph. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Cool. I think you should agree. Not that you have to, but I just think you should. So anyway, this is kind of the level of calibration that I am looking for when I'm looking at your images from your trip to the Getty. And I know that you're just kind of playing around with it. I don't expect that it's going to be perfect, but I do expect you to have some level of sophistication to where you placed the objects in your image. And it may even mean that you guys need to sort of blow them up and crop them a little differently than you took them when you were on site. But anyway, that is a good example. So moving on, I wanted to talk to you about our diagrammatic exercise. So our diagrammatic exercise is going to explore how the objects are laid out and what our intent was in creating the relationship on or within the frame, I should say. So with this one being a rule of thirds image, I threw in the rule of thirds lines, and you can change how they look. You can make them thinner, thicker. You can make them dashed, dotted, whatever you want to do. We'll talk through that in just a moment. But also we're going to create other lines that show similar relationships to what I just described to you. Like how far beyond the third line the mass of the object is going to extend on the left or the right. Whether or not there's a cadence sort of relationship to certain elements that are repetitive in the image. Whether or not there are objects that are taking up a certain amount of real estate and others in the background that are taking less. So let's look at a few examples of that right here with me. So I believe I have everything on this layer. So yeah, good. So even my guides are on the same layer as the image, and that's the way it should be for this exercise. So I'm going to start with that outer boundary. And what I'm going to do is copy these lines. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to drag it over to where the basically where the wall on the right-hand side stops, or the column stops. But I'm not going to go to like where the base stops or where the top stops, because the image is a little bit skewed, so the column is sort of leaning in on that side. So I'm just going to take the balance of that and go in the middle. So see where it's aligned here, kind of at the third line? That's approximately where I'm going to drop it, is like right here at the third line. Okay, so that's significant. I'm going to drop another one on the left-hand side, and I'm going to put it right at the edge of the awning. Feels pretty balanced, doesn't it? Okay. One thing I want to do is change the thickness of these guidelines. So I'm going to make the the rule of thirds guidelines even thinner than they are now. Right now they're a 1-point line. So I'm going to make them like a 0.75. I don't know why it wouldn't let me go down 1 to that. 0.75, maybe even less, maybe a 0.5. Okay, so now you barely get a sense of the rule of third line, but you can still see it. Okay, so I'm calibrating where I want your eyes to focus, right? I want you to feel the rule of thirds, but I want you to focus on the balance at the extremes of the image, right? What I'm trying to tell you about the balance of the object within the frame. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to do is take these lines and I'm going to change their stroke color. So the stroke color I'm going to switch to something that's going to be a little bit more intense, so to speak. But I don't necessarily want to go like full on red, because red is a little obtrusive. I think I'm going to pick something in like the orange range. Okay, so it feels analytical, but with the sort of like soft, earthy palette of the image, it doesn't overwhelm my eyes. And then I'm going to actually increase the thickness of these lines. So I'll switch them to like a 2. Does that make sense? So you still feel it. It's still kind of punching you in the face, but it's not offending you with how much it's, you know, bleeding all over the sheet. So let's grab these again. And I'm going to show you how to sort of lighten it up and sort of pull it away from the realm of being such a hard boundary. We are going to change its stroke, right? So we changed the stroke thickness, but we're also going to change the stroke. So we're going to go to the stroke panel. Click on this and go to show options if it didn't automatically open for you. And so you've got a few options here. We're not going to talk about everything just yet until we have to. But the one thing I want to do is change it into a dashed line. So you can do that by checking on dashed line. Oh, whoops, I didn't have both of them selected. Select them both like this. Check on dash line. What it's going to do, it's going to start off with some default, right? It'll be a couple points and then might not say anything after that. If I wanted it to be, are you guys familiar with what a center line is? You guys are second year architecture students? You don't know what a center line is? Come on. Who taught you drafting? You guys took a drafting class, right? Huh?
Taking it right now.
Okay. You guys should know what a center line is. Anyway, a center line is basically a long line followed by a short gap, a short line followed by a short gap. Right? I'll show you what it is just by a quick Google. Okay. When you're locating things, that's a center line, right? It has a long line with a short gap and a short dash. That's basically it. It shows the center of objects in a two-dimensional projection. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that just so I can show you how you manipulate the dash line, but we're actually going to use a regular dash line like this. So if I wanted to do a center line, I could do something like a 50, and then a 10, and a 10, and a 10. That's going to create the center line sort of look. Okay, and remember your stroke weight along with your dash distance is relative to the overall size of your page. So a 50 on an 8.5 by 11 is going to be quite different than a 50 on a 30 by 42. Okay, something to just be aware of. So anyway, I said we were going to use a dashed line. So I'm going to switch this. I'm going to get rid of that, and that. And I'm going to do a 10 with a gap of a 6. Okay. So I didn't do much to it. I took a solid orange line and I made it a very slightly different orange line with a slight gap. So all that does is it shows me the balance of that object relative to the third marks. Okay. don't know that I want to get into that yet. Well, I would show you what I think would be a better balance, but I'm not going to touch it. Let's just leave this diagram simple for now. Okay, so this diagram is, in my opinion, a completed diagram. It shows a full thought and how that thought was attempted to be executed, or just attempted, right? So with that said, what questions do you have? All right. Somber as always. The diligent students. Learning everything the first time. Never having any questions when I'm not recording. Is it shyness? You guys don't want to have your questions on YouTube? Is that what it is? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, let me know if you have questions about this at any point. I'll go over it again. I have a couple other examples I'm going to do with you too.